This right here is the velocity triangle, and it holds the 3 keys that you need to scale to $100,000 months. In fact, it has helped me build 8 companies from scratch all the way to $100,000 a month. And some of those offers have even gone on to scale to $800,000 a month. And by the way, these are the exact same keys that I've used to help 142 of my clients hit $100,000 months. For example, Selena, Joshua, and Attilio all came to me when they were at about $10,000 a month, and now they're hitting $100,000 months. And by the way, these results aren't from years ago. The 3 keys are working right now in 2025. The truth is, scaling to millions of dollars isn't about working harder. It's not about sending thousands of cold emails or even becoming a master of sales. And it's definitely not about building some massive brand like some of the biggest gurus in the space are trying to get you to believe. It all comes down to being intentional with your strategy. In other words, it's about playing chess, not checkers. And what's interesting is that everything you've been taught about getting rich goes against what it actually takes to hit $100,000 months. The problem is that no one is teaching this. So if you've been stuck at 6 figures and you still haven't hit $100,000 months, then this is for you. However, if you're just starting out at 0, then this video is probably going to overwhelm you. If that's you, then I recommend you go back and watch some of my free courses where I teach you how to go from 0 with a beginner model like an agency and make $10,000 a month. With that in mind, if you're watching this video and you make over $10,000 a month and you feel stuck, like maybe you're in the wrong vehicle, or maybe like a lot of us, you feel like you're really talented and you should be making way more money, or maybe you feel like you're in the wrong market or have the wrong offer or just aren't profiting enough for all the work that you're putting in. If that's you, then this triangle right here is going to show you exactly how I went from 0 to $800,000 per month in 2024 with a brand new offer and collected over $1 million a month in cash between all of my companies. So with that in mind, if you're ready to scale to $100,000 months with the velocity triangle, let's dive in. So there's 3 keys to scaling to $100,000 a month with the velocity triangle. And the whole idea is, how do we build enough momentum to be able to go from 10K, 20K, or even $30,000 a month all the way to that 7-figure run rate and beyond? So let's start with the first one with the M. The M stands for marketing velocity. And again, the whole key is, how do we go faster? How do we accelerate? A lot of people get stuck at $20,000 to $30,000 a month, or even 40 or even 50, because there's pure chaos in their business. They're overwhelmed. And most importantly, they don't have the systems in place to create enough leverage for them to scale. Like I mentioned earlier, it's about being intentional with your strategy. And if you just implement these 3 velocities, you're going to be able to hit those $100,000 per month way faster. So the first one is marketing velocity, and it comes down to one simple question. Can I spend $1,000 a day on ads? This is very, very simple, yet extremely powerful, and most people don't do it. You see, when people get to 20 or 30 or even 40K a month, a lot of them do it with manual efforts like cold email or LinkedIn outreach or DMs or cold calling, and they don't have enough velocity to move them towards $100,000 a month. Or if they are spending money on ads, they're just not spending enough. A lot of people, when they're scaling their offer, what they do is they limit their ad spend because they are scared to spend more. However, you need to spend about $30,000 a month for you to be able to hit $100,000 a month. And let's break that down. Let's say that your cost per acquisition is $3,000, which it is a little high. Ideally, it's more around $1,000 to $2,000 cost per acquisition for a B2B offer. And for anyone that is looking for a lower cost per acquisition, let me break it to you. It's probably because you're barely spending money. All the big dogs that are spending over $30,000 a month are happy with a cost of acquisition between 1 to 3K for a high ticket B2B offer. So worst case scenario, let's say 3K cost per acquisition, right? 3K CAC. That means that we're spending $3,000 to acquire one client. And let's say that that one client is $10,000. So let's say that every time we spend $3,000, we make back 10K. And with 3K at 30K a month, we're closing 10 clients. Now 10 clients at 10K is $100,000 a month. This is how I've been able to scale companies from zero all the way to $800,000 a month in the time period of 6 months, which for a lot of people might sound crazy, but we're just spending enough to do so. If you literally can answer this question, how can I spend $1,000 a day on ads? You're going to create enough velocity, assuming these two other keys are ready to go, which we'll talk about in a second. But if they are, you're going to be able to create enough marketing velocity to get you to $100,000 a month. So stop wasting time and effort trying to figure out cold email, trying to figure out how to squeeze the juice out of less ad spend, trying to figure out how to hit $100,000 a month without any form of marketing leverage, or in this case, I like to call it marketing velocity, without the speed. If you want to hit $100,000 a month fast, you have to be willing to spend $1,000 a day on ads. And if you're not, it's going to be very, very hard. So this is how we are able to go off and hit these big numbers quickly. And again, this assumes that you have the right resources in place, the right skills, the right team, et cetera, et cetera. But if you have those things, you still need this, or else you're not going to hit $100,000 a month. In other words, I could have the best team in the world. I could be the most skilled, but if I don't have any marketing velocity, it's going to be really, really hard. So that's the first one, marketing velocity. So that one is checked off. You guys have that one good to go. You're one step closer. The second one that we're going to talk about is P. P stands for pricing velocity. Again, we're trying to figure out how to create more leverage. Now, a lot of people, when they're starting out and they haven't made 7 figures, so they haven't gone to that $1 million mark, they like to charge very little. They like to charge $500 or $1,000, or if they're feeling confident, maybe $3,000. The problem with this is that you need a lot of volume in order to hit $100,000 a month. So what you have to ask yourself is, how can I create an offer that I can charge $10,000 for? So for example, let's say that right now you're charging $1,000 a month for agency services. Instead of selling a month-to-month package, maybe you just sell a 10-month package at $10,000. So now you're able to go out, again, spend $3,000 to acquire a client. And at 10 clients that buy the package of 10 months at $10K, you hit your first $100,000 month. So what we really want to be looking at is, how do we increase the ticket price? This could be done through a few different ways. Solving more problems. So for example, I was helping a dental agency and they were like, Joel, how do we charge more? I said, well, instead of just doing Facebook ads, why don't you also do Google ads? And instead of just doing ads, why don't you also call their leads? Now that offer is worth more because you're not just running their ads, you're also calling their leads and getting them scheduled in for an appointment. On top of that, let's say that now you partner with a financing company and you can offer dental financing to all of the patients that you help them acquire and then call them over the phone. Now you're seen as much more valuable. And let's take it one step further. So instead of just solving more problems, we can add more time. What I told this dental agency to do is to sell a 3-month program. So 3 months for $10,000. So just add more time, solve more problems. The other thing that you could look at is innovating, because if you have a unique solution that no one else does, then inherently it's worth more. If you're selling a commodity and your service looks like everyone else's and it's just as good as everyone else's, then it's just a race to the bottom. This is simple supply and demand economics. If you're the only one that can supply a certain solution, then your demand is going to be through the roof. Whereas if you have hundreds of people that can supply the same solution, the demand for you specifically is going to go down. So if you can come up with a way to innovate, the value of your offer will go up. For example, I helped another agency become one of the first influencer marketing agencies in the medical space, where they would go out and find influencers who wanted different med spa treatments and then fly them out to their location, do a whole med spa treatment, even pay them for the content. But now they're getting all these big influencers to promote this med spa. And they're the very first influencer marketing agency of its kind for med spas. Therefore, they're able to charge more. They can literally charge $10,000 just for all of the campaign management of going out, finding the influencers, and they could even have the med spa pay the influencer on top of their fee. And the way that they're able to charge so much is because they're innovating. They're one of a kind. Their service has less supply. There's less options out there. So with that in mind, solve more problems, add more time, innovate. Those are some easy ways that you can charge more, but ultimately you have to be able to charge more, because it's going to make the path to $100,000 a month way easier. For example, to just take it one step further, now when I look at offers, for those of you guys that don't know, now I run a management company. We partner with different offers. And the very first thing that I look at is how much can we charge? Because if I can go in and just charge, let's just take it to an extreme. Normally it's $20K and up, but let's just take it to an extreme, $50,000 and up. Now I only have to close 2 of these and I'm hitting $100,000 a month. And by the way, now I can spend way more to acquire that client because it's so much more profitable. So not only does pricing velocity make it easier for you to hit $100,000 a month because you don't have to close that many clients. But on top of that, it makes it easier because now you could spend more money to acquire those clients. And now your sales team has more at-bats. So that's the second key of the velocity triangle. Let's go to the last one. S. You probably guessed it. Sales velocity. We talked about how to go faster with marketing. We talked about how to go faster with your monetization model. Last but not least, let's talk about how to go faster with your sales team. This comes down to answering one very simple question. Do I have the bandwidth to take 5 meetings per day? Now, guess what? For most people trying to scale to $100,000 a month, the answer is no. Between doing client fulfillment, between handling their VA team or any of the team members they have and managing them, between doing all of the admin tasks, between going to the gym, eating, living their life, and then taking some random sales calls here and there, they do not have the time and most importantly, the focus to take 5 meetings per day with prospects and do it with high quality, right? A lot of people can take 5 meetings, but very few people can do it well. So what I'm looking for here is how do we create the bandwidth to take 5 sales calls per day and do those sales calls well with a lot of energy, with focus. And if you really think about it, let's say it costs us $200 per showed meeting. We're spending, again, $1,000 a day. So that's 5 calls. And let's say that 1 out of 3 are qualified. So that's $600 per qualified appointment. And let's say that we close 1 out of 5. That leads us to our cost per acquisition of $3,000. So we need to be able to talk to 5 qualified people that show up. And again, this assumes that only 1 out of every 3 appointments that show up are actually qualified. And most people have way too high of an expectation around paid ads. They think that everyone's going to be their dream customer. They don't really understand the volume that is required to make paid ads work. And they don't understand that the way that you actually make paid ads work is with things like having pricing velocity so that every time you close a client, it's very, very profitable. With that in mind, most people have way too high of an expectation. They think that all the leads are going to be high quality. And in reality, I'm thinking 1 out of 3 of the ones that show up, that's not even including the ones that don't show up. So let's say that your actual cost per appointment is 100, your show up rate is 50%, so $200 per showed appointment, then 1 out of 3 are actually qualified who you can make an offer to and you're like, man, this person might buy. And your closing rate, again, most people have way too high of an expectation, but let's say it's 20%, which is much more in line with what it is for most people. And now you're still closing at a $3,000 cost per acquisition and the math works. So what you need to do for sales velocity is figure out who can take 5 calls per day, 5 really good calls. Now there's a few options. If you're a master of sales, if you're really, really good at sales, what I would recommend you to do is to delegate all non-essentials. So for example, if you're still cleaning your house, that's a non-essential. Delegate it. If you're still cooking your meals, that's a non-essential, at least within the context of business. Delegate it. Pay for meal prep. Pay for a chef. I'd rather you take that extra hour or 2 per day and spend it on sales calls. So all the non-essentials, these are things like any tasks that can be done by a VA. Those are non-essentials. Any admin work. For example, right now I'm looking for a new home insurance because I'm purchasing a new home. I'm not the one doing that. I'm having my assistant go out, talk to all the insurance companies, get me the best rate, and come back to me. That task alone could take an hour and a half. In worst cases, it could even take 2 to 3 hours. And imagine if you had those 2 to 3 hours back to go all in and focus on how do I get a client? How do I close someone? So all admin tasks. And really, it's all the BS that you do, all the BS tasks. So delegate all the non-essentials. That's the first step. And again, this is if you're really good at sales. I'll talk about if you're not so good at sales. That's the first step. If you are really good at sales, you also want to then delegate all low risk tasks. So let me explain what I mean by that. Sales is a high-risk task because if it doesn't work, you're missing out on a lot of money. Whereas something like account management, if it doesn't work, you're just going to have a slightly unhappy client and you could just call them and make things right. Worst case scenario, a client might be a little upset or there might be a miscommunication, but it's easier to fix. It's lower stakes. So any tasks that are lower stakes, delegate them. And then last but not least, get yourself a sales admin. If you're like, Joel, I don't have the time. I'm maxed out. Get yourself a sales admin and a setter because again, that's lower stakes. And the setter can help you with follow-ups. We don't want the setter doing discovery because discovery is higher stakes. You want them doing follow-ups. We want them reaching out to no-shows. We want them to do light appointment confirmation. And what I mean by light is I don't want them to go into a 30-minute discovery. All I want them to do is to call and say, hey, I'm just calling to confirm your appointment with Joe at 3 p.m. Does that time still work? Do you have the calendar invite? Do you know how to access the call on Zoom? All that good stuff. So if they start asking things like, well, how does it work? Or what's the price? You're like, that's a great question for Joe. He can go over all of those things with you at 3 p.m. today. So just light appointment confirmation, no discovery. All the things that take up your time that are lower stakes. So if you're really good at sales, you need to find the time to be able to actually take 5 calls a day consistently day in, day out. On top of that, if you're maxed out and you're like, I am really good at sales, I did all these things, I still don't have time to take 5 calls per day. This is when you need to either get a business partner for the back end so you don't have to worry about anything other than sales, or you need to actually start hiring a sales team. Again, this is risky because if the sales team doesn't perform, you dip. However, if you don't have the time, you need to figure out how can I take 5 calls per day with insane focus. So with that in mind, this is if you're good at sales. If you're not good at sales, my recommendation, like if you're like, Joel, I'm super introverted, I'm not good at sales. If you are in a sales heavy business. So for example, if you launched a software like High Level, they don't have big sales teams. But if you're running a business that requires a sales team, to be honest, I would just partner with someone because you're probably, let's say that you're okay at sales, but you hate it. You're probably delaying sales calls. You're probably hesitating and you're emotionally stopping the business from having enough velocity to scale to $100,000 a month. So in that case, I would just partner with someone. I would take my time. I wouldn't rush it. I would do at least a 6-month test drive of the partnership, but I would just find someone that's really good at sales that you know, like, and trust that you could commit to building a long-term business with, and I would just do that. If you're just good enough that you could hire a sales team and still manage, then that's another option. Building a sales team. That being said, that would be my secondary option because if you don't like sales, if you're avoiding sales, if you're pretty introverted, then even managing a sales team is going to require too much energy from you. And if it's requiring too much energy from you, then you don't have enough leverage in order to hit $100,000 months. So if you're super introverted, I would just partner with someone. Regardless, to keep it simple, you have to figure out how you can take 5 calls per day. If you can do that, and you can take 5 really high quality calls with focus. And then out of all the calls that you take, assuming that 1 out of 3 are really qualified that you can make an offer to and you can close at 20%, you're going to have enough sales velocity to hit $100,000 months. But again, the problem is that most people just don't have enough time to take 5 calls. So you need to figure that out. With that in mind, if you solve the marketing velocity problem, if you solve the pricing velocity problem, and if you solve the sales velocity problem, here's one big caveat: assuming your product or service is dialed in, which is a whole separate video. We're not going to talk about it on this one, but I can make a future video, which, by the way, if you guys want a video on having a $100,000 a month product or service, comment below, let me know. But assuming that this is in place, which is the cornerstone of the triangle, as long as you have enough sales velocity, marketing velocity, and pricing velocity, everything will be in place to hit $100,000 a month. Now, last caveat, you can't just have one of these. You need all 3. If you have a lot of sales velocity, but you're not getting enough appointments, it doesn't work. If you have a lot of sales velocity, but you're charging $500 per client, you're going to have to close so many freaking clients, and it's going to take a lot of time. Now, are there businesses that you can scale to $100,000 a month with lower price points? For sure. but then it takes more time. This is showing you how to do it as quickly and efficiently as possible, again, assuming the product and service are dialed in. So with that in mind, if you guys enjoyed this video, it would mean a lot to me if you could like, subscribe, and last but not least, drop a comment below. What was your biggest takeaway? I want to interact with you guys. I took a long break on YouTube and I'm back. I really needed a spiritual break to kind of just take a step back, reset, and figure out what I want to talk about. And what I want to talk about moving forward is more advanced topics. You know, over the last few years, I talked about how to get your first client, how to get your first 5 clients, how to hit $10,000 a month. Now I want to talk about everything I've learned to hit 7 and even 8 figures and everything that I'm learning to go from 30 million to 100 million. So that's pretty much it. Drop a comment below with your biggest takeaway if you don't mind. And if you guys want more videos like this, if you like the format of the notepad and the more advanced content, let me know. We'll talk soon. Peace.